Hey everyone, today I'm going to talk about economic development during the market revolution, so the early 1800s. I'm going to start first with two things that happened during Jefferson's time and Madison's time in office. The Embargo Act and the War of 1812 both lead to more economic development. If you want to know more about those two things, I have a video on the War of 1812, and I also did a video on Jefferson's time in office. Go back and check them out. Well, this economic development happened because the American people couldn't trade abroad, and so they had to focus on selling products within the United States instead. Also, the protective tariff that was passed in 1816 helped manufacturers shift to making more American goods to sell products within the United States. So transportation began to improve during this time period. Transportation is super important because it allows people to connect all parts of the country together. It created a national economy because now goods can be traded more easily, and it also forced different regions to specialize in specific things. So like the South, for example, grew cotton, and the North worked on creating manufactured goods. It also encouraged more immigrants to move to the West as goods and supplies can now reach there more easily. And it moved the crops and the livestock to the markets in the East much faster. There are several examples of new transportation systems that you could use in your essay or short answer questions. For example, the National Road, also called the Cumberland Road, connects Maryland to Illinois. The invention of the steamboat helps boats now travel up and down rivers against the current, which cuts down the shipping time significantly. The Erie Canal is created in New York, which also helps with shipping goods across the canal. And more railroads are added over time. In 1836, there were 1,000 miles of track, but by 1860, so right before the Civil War, there were 30,000 miles of track. So we see a significant increase in the transportation systems in the United States, which helps the economy a lot. There were other economic developments too. In New England, they began to be the place where all the industrial development was occurring. Remember, the South is mostly agriculture, and the North is more industrial and urban-based, so the bigger cities. In New England, they have more people to work in the factories. Shipping brought the money needed to create these businesses, and they had access to the ports that made it easy to bring in the raw materials like the cotton that they needed to make clothes, for example. Plus, they had easy access to the rivers to ship their items further inland or down south, for example. By 1850, the North will make about 2/3 of America's manufactured goods. Workers also had changes during this time period. Workers had long hours and low pay. Some early on tried tactics like striking, and in some cases it did work, but mostly it did not. In fact, early on at this time, labor unions were considered a criminal conspiracy, and it wasn't until Massachusetts Supreme Court ruled in 1842 in the court case Commonwealth versus Hunt that labor unions were officially declared legal. But it takes a much longer time for working conditions to really improve, as we will talk about when we get to time period 6 and the time of big businesses. There were also new inventions in agricultural technology that helped lead to a larger national economy. In the South, the invention of the cotton gin is short for engine, made it much faster to pull the seeds out of the cotton. This made cotton much faster to produce, which meant way more money for the South. Unfortunately, it also meant that slavery was also increased in the South as more land was cleared to grow more cotton. This is when the idea of king cotton, or cotton is king, really begins to come about. In the West, the soil was thicker, which made it harder to break up in order to grow crops. In response to this problem, John Deere created a steel plow that was light enough to be pulled by a horse and could easily break up this hard soil. And then Cyrus McCormick developed a mechanical mower reaper, which allowed one man to do the work of 5 in a field. This changed farming from small, sustainable farming to large-scale cash crop farming instead. All of these changes are part of what we call the market revolution, which is a shift from colonial times where people would grow or make everything they needed, and if they couldn't, then they would trade something with their neighbors. But now, Americans have created a huge market of all kinds of goods, so people began to specialize in one specific type of crop or job. In the South, they grew cotton, for example. In the West, they grew wheat. And in the Northeast, they had the factories where workers worked on one specific product, for example, like in a textile mill. This market revolution increased prosperity for Americans as they had access to store-bought fabrics, candles, and soap instead of all handmade products. But it also widened the gap between the rich and the poor. Millionaires weren't really a thing before this, but after and really by the time of the Civil War, we have people who run these large corporations who are making so much money and the workers way less. Okay, today's practice question is from the 2017 exam, and it was a long essay question prompt. It says, evaluate the extent to which the market revolution marked a turning point in women's lives in the United States. In the development of your argument, explain what changed and what stayed the same for women as a result of the market revolution within the period 1800 to 1850. So take a few minutes, think about how you would answer that. What would be your thesis? What would be your context? What would be some specific evidence you would include? There are some key things that women are involved in during this time period. Also some things that were not specifically mentioned within this video. So you want to take some time to look over that so you could answer this if you see this on the AP test. I hope you guys have a great day. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in class.